This is a briefing provided by Jim Walker, the hack repair guy from HackRepair.com.
And I am here to help you make sense of it all.
Yeah, welcome everyone. You've given us a ton of cybersecurity news to dig into today.
Yeah.
Really fascinating stuff, and we're going to look at what it all means, especially for WordPress websites.
Especially for WordPress sites. Yeah.
So our sources include eSecurity Planet, Cyber Management Alliance, Patchstack, Bleeping, Computer Solid WP, and a warning from CISA.
Mm-hmm.
We're mainly focusing on March 2025, but, some of this stuff is longer-term trends and specific vulnerabilities.
Yeah, very much so.
That we think you need to be aware of. So
Yeah.
Our mission, I guess, in this deep dive is to kind of extract what's really important from all this information,
Yeah.
give you a sense of the threat landscape, particularly as it affects WordPress,
Mm-hmm.
without getting, too bogged down in technical jargon.
Yeah. We want to make it accessible to everyone.
The risks are increasing, so let's get right to it and help you understand what's important to know.
For sure.
And how to stay prepared.
Stay safe out there.
Okay, so let's begin with something that comes up in a few of these reports, which is vulnerabilities in WordPress plugins.
Mm-hmm.
eSecurity Planet reported on 5 compromised plugins back in June 2024,
Right.
which they said put millions of websites at risk.
Wow.
So what happened there?
Well, eSecurity Planet says malicious code was injected into these plugins.
Okay.
And it wasn't just like a small thing.
Right.
This gave attackers the ability to create unauthorized admin accounts on the websites. So you have admin access that's like the keys to the kingdom.
Right.
From there, they could steal sensitive data, install more malicious software, even take over the whole website and lock out the legitimate owner.
Wow. So really taking advantage of the fact that we rely on so many of these third-party
Exactly.
plugins for WordPress.
It's a double-edged sword, really.
Yeah. And then we also have Patchstack's State of WordPress Security 2025 report. And for the year 2024, they say that a staggering 96% of all the vulnerabilities they found were in plugins.
Wow.
So why are plugins such a big target?
Well, think about it. The WordPress core itself gets a lot of attention from security researchers, and there's a dedicated security team. But plugins, there are thousands upon thousands of them.
Right.
And they're often developed by smaller teams, individuals with varying levels of security expertise.
Yeah.
So it's a much bigger attack surface than the core software.
Right.
Each plugin you install is essentially extending the functionality and therefore the potential vulnerabilities of your website.
Yeah, it's like adding more doors and windows to your house.
Exactly. Each one's a potential entry point.
Right.
If it's not properly secured.
So plugins, they're amazing.
Oh, they're fantastic.
But we have to be
Yeah.
really careful.
Security is paramount.
And it's not just the number of vulnerabilities, is it? I mean, Patchstack also points out that it's increasingly hard to know which ones to prioritize.
Oh, that's a huge problem.
How do you even begin?
Right. With so many vulnerabilities, it's easy to get overwhelmed
Yeah.
and not know where to focus your efforts.
Yeah.
This is where Patchstack's priority scoring system comes in.
Okay.
They argue that the traditional CVSS, or Common Vulnerability Scoring System, often overrates the severity of WordPress vulnerabilities,
Oh, interesting.
things that might be difficult to exploit in the real world.
Okay, so how does Patchstack's system work?
Well, they've analyzed a ton of data on WordPress vulnerabilities that have actually been exploited in the wild.
Okay.
So their system considers factors like whether an attacker needs to be logged in to exploit the flaw, the specific type of vulnerability, how easy it is to exploit, and how many active installations of the affected plugin there are.
Okay.
They use this real-world data to categorize vulnerabilities as high, medium, or low priority.
Okay.
And in 2024, they found that 11.6% of vulnerabilities had a high Patchstack priority,
Wow.
meaning they were either actively being exploited or were very likely to be.
Okay.
Another 18.8% were classified as medium risk.
So that's almost a third.
That about 30% of new WordPress vulnerabilities in 2024 pose a significant and realistic risk of exploitation.
That's a much more, concrete way to think about it than just a general severity score.
Absolutely. It gives you a better sense of what to focus on.
Yeah, because if it's just high or critical,
Right.
It's like, okay, is it really that bad?
Right, exactly. It can lead to alert fatigue,
Yeah.
where you see so many warnings
Right.
that you start ignoring them.
Right.
Their priority system tries to filter out the noise and highlight what really matters.
Right. 1 in 3 new vulnerabilities is...
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, that's pretty significant.
It is.
Another statistic from Patchstack that I found really concerning is that 43% of all the vulnerabilities they found in 2024 required no authentication to exploit.
Yeah, that's a big one.
So what does that mean for a website owner?
Well, it means an attacker doesn't need to have any kind of account or even interact with your login page
Yeah.
to potentially exploit the flaw. They can just target it directly, which makes it much easier to exploit on a large scale.
Right.
So that lowers the barrier for malicious actors and increases the potential for widespread automated attacks.
So they don't even have to figure out how to get in. They can just...
Exactly. They just go straight for the vulnerability.
Wow. They also mentioned that cross-site scripting, or XSS, continues to be a major problem.
A very common one.
So can you remind us what that is?
Yeah, so XSS essentially allows attackers to inject malicious code, often in the form of JavaScript, into your website.
Okay.
And when another user visits an infected page, that code runs in their browser, potentially stealing their login credentials or other sensitive information.
So it can spread.
It can definitely spread, and it's a persistent problem across the web.
Yeah, and it's not just about the vulnerabilities themselves, it's the scale of the infections. That's also pretty mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
Patchstack referred to Security's data, which showed over 500,000 infected websites in 2024.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a huge number.
It is. And it's probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I mean, no single security provider can see every compromised website out there.
Right.
Security did mention that ProPush was a very common tactic they observed.
So that's where they trick users into subscribing to unwanted push notifications.
Exactly. It's annoying, and it can be used to spread malware.
Ugh. And also, generic defacements accounted for most website defacements.
That's where the content of the website is maliciously altered.
Okay. Patchstack seems to make a point that just keeping WordPress and your plugins updated isn't enough.
Yeah, they're right.
Why is that?
Well, keeping things updated is fundamental, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not foolproof.
Yeah.
New vulnerabilities can be discovered in even the latest versions of software, and sometimes updates themselves can introduce new issues.
Oh, right.
They advocate for a more comprehensive layered security approach. So that includes being really careful about which plugins and themes you install in the first place, understanding the risks associated with them, monitoring security advisories, and maybe even using security plugins that offer things like web application firewalls and the malware scanning to provide extra layers of protection.
So basically, don't assume that because you've updated everything, you're good to go.
Exactly. You need to be proactive.
And they mentioned some of the, the kind of turbulence in the WordPress ecosystem in late 2024.
Yeah.
Specifically, the disagreement between Automatic,
right,
the company behind WordPress.com, and WP Engine, a major hosting provider.
Yeah, that was a bit of a shakeup.
So how could something like that affect security?
Well, whenever there's a public dispute between major players in the WordPress world,
right,
it can create uncertainty and potentially disrupt the normal flow of updates and information.
Yeah.
In this specific case, there were concerns about the reliability and timeliness of WordPress core updates for sites hosted on WP Engine. So for someone relying on those updates for security patches, any disruption in that process could leave them vulnerable.
Right.
Patchstack suggests that this kind of fragmentation within the community
right,
could indirectly erode trust and potentially impact the overall security posture of the ecosystem.
So less cohesion, more risk.
Potentially, yeah. It's something to keep an eye on.
And finally, looking ahead, Patchstack talks about their own AI-powered vulnerability scanner, and they express concern that similar AI tools could be used by cybercriminals.
Yeah, that's a worrying thought.
That's a bit scary.
It is.
So what do we make of that?
Well, AI has incredible potential for good in cybersecurity.
Right.
Helping us identify and analyze vulnerabilities more efficiently.
Right.
But of course, the same technology can be used by attackers to discover and exploit weaknesses at scale.
Of course.
It's a constant arms race in cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's a game of cat and mouse.
Exactly. As soon as one side develops a new tool, the other side tries to figure out how to use it against them.
Okay, so moving on from kind of the WordPress-specific landscape to the broader cybersecurity world in March 2025, the Cyber Management Alliance put together this report called Biggest Cyber Attacks, Ransomware Attacks, Data Breaches of March 2025.
Right. A very comprehensive report.
It sounds like it was a busy month.
It was a very active month for cyber criminals.
Yeah.
Their report shows that successful attacks targeted a very diverse range of organizations.
Okay.
Victims included major social media platforms like X, Prominent educational institutions like New York University,
Okay.
technology platforms like GitHub Actions,
Mm-hmm.
the gaming world with Wemix,
Okay.
and even government agencies like the Polish Space Agency.
So no one is immune.
Exactly. It really highlights that no organization, regardless of its size, sector, or perceived level of security, is immune to these threats.
Okay, let's get into some specifics. The report lists a number of ransomware attacks that occurred in March 2025. What were some of the most significant ones and what impact did they have?
Well, several of these attacks had some pretty serious consequences.
Okay.
The Palau Health Ministry was hit by Quillen ransomware, and unfortunately, they confirmed that patient data was compromised.
Oh, no.
The Toronto Zoo disclosed a cyber attack attributed to Akira ransomware,
Okay.
and they lost 2 decades worth of visitor data.
Wow.
The Sunflower Medical Group in Kansas reported that over 220,000 individuals were affected by a Reseda ransomware attack.
Okay.
Even critical infrastructure was targeted.
Okay.
The Yap State Health System in Micronesia was taken offline by an unknown strain of ransomware.
Wow.
Union County in Pennsylvania had sensitive resident data stolen,
Mm-hmm.
and Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia faced a disruptive ransomware attack and a $10 million ransom demand.
Did they pay?
They reportedly refused to pay.
Good for them.
These examples really show how damaging and disruptive ransomware can be.
Absolutely. And the targets are so diverse.
It's really indiscriminate.
The Cyber Management Alliance report also lists a large number of data breaches that happened in March 2025. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, there were quite a few.
Yeah.
Rubrix, a company that specializes in data security, ironically disclosed a breach of one of their servers that hosted log files.
Oh, the irony.
They had to rotate authentication keys as a precaution.
Okay.
Angel One, an Indian stock brokerage firm, had client information stored on their Amazon Web Services account breached.
And what happened?
Their stock price actually dropped as a result.
Wow.
Caruth Compliance Consulting, which manages retirement plans for public school employees, was hit by a Skira ransomware attack.
Okay.
Thousands of individuals were affected.
And then there was Power School.
Right, a major provider of technology to schools.
Yeah.
They disclosed the widespread impact of a breach that occurred in December 2024,
Okay.
affecting millions of students and teachers.
Wow.
They also revealed that they'd been targeted multiple times earlier in 2024.
So they were really under attack.
It seems so.
The Pennsylvania State Education Association also reported a big breach.
Over 500,000 people affected.
And what kind of data was compromised?
A wide range of sensitive personal data names, addresses, social security numbers. The works.
Oh, no.
The Chinese search giant Baidu denied a breach attributing leaked data to doxing databases. But the cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase confirmed they were the primary target of a supply chain attack.
What does that mean, a supply chain attack?
It means the attackers targeted a third-party vendor that Coinbase relied on.
Okay.
In this case, it originated with GitHub Actions.
Okay.
Oracle initially denied claims of a breach involving millions of records, but some of their customers reported confirming the incident.
So, a little bit of confusion there.
There was some back and forth for sure.
And finally, Lafayette Federal Credit Union disclosed that an incident from the previous year had impacted over 75,000 of their members.
So these incidents really highlight the many different ways sensitive information can be exposed.
Yeah, it's really scary to think about all the different ways that they're coming at us.
It is a constant battle.
Beyond ransomware and data breaches, the report also details other types of cyber attacks that took place in March 2025. What were some of those?
These included attacks that didn't necessarily involve encrypting data for ransom or stealing large amounts of sensitive information.
Okay.
So, for example, Anne Arundel County in Maryland was still dealing with the effects of cyber attacks that were disrupting public services.
Okay.
Raymond Ltd., an Indian conglomerate, confirmed a cybersecurity incident that affected their IT systems, although they said their retail operations weren't disrupted.
Okay.
Even the YouTube account of Costa Rica's presidency was compromised.
What?
Hackers posted cryptocurrency-related content.
It's kind of like a
It's not
defacement. Yeah.
Defacement.
A bit of a publicity stunt, maybe.
Wow.
Ukraine's state railway company, Ukredalizmitsya, experienced a large-scale cyber attack on their online systems,
Oh, no.
forcing them to revert to offline ticket sales.
Wow, so really disrupting your operation.
Absolutely. And a Russian hacker collective known as NoName057 targeted various Belgian websites.
Although their efforts seem to have had limited success.
So lots of different motives behind these attacks.
Definitely, some are about disrupting services, spreading propaganda. Others are about financial gain or reputational damage.
And of course, we have the constant development of new malware.
Well, yeah, that never stops.
The report lists several new ransomware and other malware strains that were discovered in March 2025.
Right.
So give us some examples of that.
Well, there was ClickFix, which has been used in phishing campaigns.
Okay.
Poco R8 1111 bot, which is a botnet targeting Internet of Things devices.
Right.
Massjacker, designed to steal cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
Polyglot malware, which appears to be targeting critical infrastructure.
Wow.
Kospi, spyware linked to North Korea.
Okay.
Stalacherat Arcane, which can steal a ton of different user data.
Okay.
And Atlantis AIO, which is described as a new cybercrime platform offering automated tools for credential stuffing.
It's amazing how creative they are.
It's alarming,
Yeah.
really, but yes, they're constantly innovating, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it really does highlight the need for ongoing vigilance,
Absolutely.
proactive threat detection,
Mhm.
and keeping your security software up to date.
It's an ongoing process.
The Cyber Management Alliance report also talks about all the newly discovered vulnerabilities and the patches that were released in March 2025.
It was a lot to keep up with.
I bet. So they must have a huge list of CVEs in that report.
Well, they do. It's quite extensive.
Common vulnerabilities and exposures.
Mm-hmm.
And they also specifically mentioned CISA's vulnerability summary for the week of March 3, 2025.
Right.
Which just emphasizes how many vulnerabilities were discovered in that 1 week.
It was a busy week for security researchers.
I bet.
And while we don't have specific details on WordPress plugin vulnerabilities within those broader lists,
Right.
the sheer number of vulnerabilities being discovered across all kinds of software and hardware is a clear indication of the ongoing challenges
Yeah.
in maintaining secure systems.
And the CS vulnerability summary really drives home how widespread the problem is.
Absolutely.
They list a really diverse set of affected products.
They do. It's everything from VasionPrint, formerly PrinterLogic, to Arctera InfoScale, to various NVIDIA products.
Okay.
The Mini Orange Social Login WordPress plugin,
Mm-hmm.
Vix Rancor CS framework, the WordPress Awesome Import and Export, plugin product input fields for WooCommerce,
Okay.
the FlexMag theme, Zoom Sounds, Aomatic, Epicor, Profit 21, IBM Engineering Requirements Management Doors. Next,
Wow.
the Kivo Backup and Replication, Apache S3 ArcGIS Server Editor, Mavo.
This is a long list.
It is. And I'm not even done. Alpheon AC 1443 firmware, Huawei EmuUI, and HarmonyOS Wind Media e-commerce template school management system for WordPress, Paragon Partition Manager,
Yeah.
Axis OS GitLab.
Okay.
Faith Themes, Homey Vim, Emissary OpenTelemetry.net, ImageSharp XWiki Confluence Migrator Pro,
Okay.
Backdrop CMS Prism.js, StageStart.js, QNAP QTS, and Quarter devices, and even various components of the Linux kernel.
Wow.
So you can see vulnerabilities can be found in virtually any type of software or hardware. And yes, that includes WordPress plugins and themes.
Right.
It's all part of a much larger ongoing security challenge.
Okay, so finally, the Cyber Management Alliance report concludes with this section on warnings, advisories, reports, and analyses from March 2025.
Right.
It's a very long section.
It is. It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, so what were some of the key takeaways?
Well, this section really gives us a snapshot of the broader threat intelligence landscape during that month.
Okay.
So, for instance, CISA announced their continued monitoring of Russian cyber threats.
Okay.
The UK's privacy watchdog launched investigations into major social media platforms like TikTok, Reddit, and Imgur
Mm-hmm.
over concerns about children's data privacy.
Okay.
There were arrests made in New York related to a scheme involving the theft of StubHub tickets through back-end system access.
Okay.
There was a warning issued about cybercriminals impersonating a well-known Russian ransomware gang for extortion.
Right.
Microsoft alerted users to a Chinese cyber espionage group called Silk Typhoon,
Okay.
targeting remote management tools and cloud services.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube cautioned about the use of AI-generated videos of their CEO and phishing attacks.
That's interesting.
Yeah, very sophisticated.
Yeah.
Reports emerged of scammers impersonating the Beyondlian ransomware gang in fake ransom notes sent through traditional mail.
Wow, so old school.
Go back to basics.
Microsoft took action to remove malicious GitHub repositories that were being used in a big malvertising campaign. The Akira ransomware gang was observed exploiting unsecured webcams as part of their encryption attack, so people need to cover their webcams.
Definitely a good idea.
There was an arrest made in Memphis for the illegal leaking of unreleased movies.
Always something going on in Hollywood.
Microsoft reported that a North Korean threat group known as Moonstone Sleet was deploying the Quilin ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
The FTC closed its investigation into the 2023 ransomware attack against MGM Resorts International.
Okay.
Microsoft issued a warning about a phishing campaign targeting Booking.com users that used the ClickFix malware. A large-scale phishing attack impersonating Coinbase and mimicking a mandatory wallet migration was detected.
Right, preying on people's fears.
U.S. cities were warned about mobile phishing campaigns that were impersonating parking violation departmments.
So clever.
A widespread phishing campaign targeted GitHub repositories with fake security alert issues.
Like you're trying to trick developers.
Threat actors were reportedly spreading remote access Trojans, or RATs, through emails related to a cryptocurrency named after President Trump on the Binance platform.
Wow.
Signal, the encrypted messaging app, reportedly stopped responding to requests from Ukrainian law enforcement regarding Russian cyber threats. Mozilla urged Firefox users to update their browsers due to an expiring root certificate.
Always important to keep your browsers up to date.
There were reports indicating that CISO is facing budget cuts that would impact cybersecurity intelligence sharing bodies.
Oh, sounded good.
The Medusa ransomware gang was reported to be actively targeting over 300 victims in critical infrastructure sectors.
Wow, that's a big one.
Nearly a dozen different nation-state-backed hacking groups were found to be exploiting a specific Windows vulnerability.
Right, so even nation-states are getting involved.
Google announced an agreement to acquire the cloud security firm Wiz.
Okay.
A long-running malware operation known as Daliwe was discovered to have compromised thousands of WordPress websites since 2016.
Wow, so it had been flying under the radar for a long time.
The FTC took legal action against a company called ClickProfit for deceptive income claims.
Okay.
Microsoft investigated an outage affecting Outlook on the web users. The UK's National Cybersecurity Centre published timelines for the migration to post-quantum cryptography.
Right, preparing for the future.
Infosys Limited agreed to pay a settlement related to a 2023 data breach at one of their subsidiaries.
Okay.
A former coach at the University of Michigan was charged with hacking into student-athlete databases.
Wow, insider threats are always a concern.
A new phishing campaign was targeting SEO professionals with malicious advertisements disguised as SEMrush Google ads.
Oh, so targeting a specific niche?
The FBI issued a warning about fake online document converter websites being used for data theft and ransomware deployment.
So be careful where you convert your documents.
The UK's National Crime Agency warned about a new generation of young English-speaking cyber criminals.
Oh, wow, the next generation.
The cryptocurrency platform Abracadabra Finance suffered a significant loss of funds due to a hacking incident.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's becoming more and more common.
And finally, Advanced, a UK-based healthcare IT provider, was fined for a 2022 ransomware attack they had experienced.
So as you can see, March 2025 was a very busy month.
Yeah, a relentless barrage of attacks.
And the tactics are constantly evolving.
So we have to stay vigilant.
Absolutely.
We also have a brief mention of a solid WP vulnerability report from March 5, 2025, which identified some WordPress themes with security vulnerabilities.
Right.
So do we know anything specific about those?
Well, the excerpt we have from the solid WP report doesn't provide specific details about the vulnerabilities, but it does list several WordPress themes that were found to have security issues at that time.
Okay.
These included themes like NewsCrunch, VW Storefront Bricks, Builder Car Dealer with multiple listings, Enfold also with multiple listings, and Nocre.
Okay, so just more evidence that we have to be really careful about
Absolutely.
themes as well as plugins.
Themes are just as important as plugins when it comes to security.
So to sum all this up for you, our listener, it's clear that the cyber threat landscape is vast and constantly changing, impacting a huge range of targets. WordPress websites and their plugins are a significant area of vulnerability.
Very much so.
Requiring constant vigilance. But as we've seen from this broader overview, the threats extend far beyond just WordPress.
Absolutely.
Affecting individuals, businesses, and even critical infrastructure all over the world.
Right. Everyone is a potential target.
So taking proactive security measures, staying informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities, and understanding that simply updating your software might not be enough are all absolutely crucial in this ever-evolving environment.
It's an ongoing process.
So this brings us to a question for you to think about. Given the increasing sophistication and sheer volume of cyber threats, How can individuals and organizations best adapt their security strategies?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah, how do we move beyond simply reacting to attacks and instead develop a more proactive and resilient security posture
Right. How do we get ahead of the curve?
that can help prevent them in the first place?
It's a challenge that requires continuous learning, adaptation, and a commitment to ongoing security practices in this increasingly interconnected world.
This has been a security briefing.
And we hope you found it informative.
If you find yourself in need of expert assistance with a compromised WordPress website or want to bolster your defenses to prevent future issues, please consider reaching out to Jim Walker, the Hack Repair Guy at HackRepair.com.
He's the best in the business.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Stay safe out there.